Hello, good day, everyone. Welcome to Launch Your Career. This is our fifth episode where we are exploring 24 different job roles in tech. I'm really excited to focus on this one because I love web developers and web development in general. And so today, our special guest is Sarah Gibbons. Welcome, Sarah.
Hey, Justin. Thanks. Glad to be here. It's going to be fun. Talk about all the stuff that I love.
Yeah, absolutely. I think web development one is one that's just really near and dear to me. The web is something that I think is just amazing. When you think about just the amount of information that we humans have and how the web was one of the key elements of that. And so I just think that web development it's fundamental, it's foundational, regardless of whether you become a web developer or not. You can't be a human and not access the web at some point and such. So pretty good one.
Right. I totally agree. And I think it makes it more accessible in a way because we're all used to being on the web. So it's a easy entry point to pull people into the coding world.
Yeah, totally. Well, we're going to get to know you and learn a little bit more about what inspired you, and even got some pretty cool demos later in the show. Before we get to that, just very quick, everyone out there, we do have a code of conduct. Be respectful, be kind, of course, but please share your voice. Ask us questions. Both Sarah and I are going to be taking questions live in this one, and then we also have a later episode where we will be available in the live chat Q&A, and then we'll air the pre-record for those of you out there who want to get even more detailed questions and things like that as well. Yeah, so Sarah, let's get to know you a little bit as a web developer and as your career and such. So let's just begin with, I think, something that you do that really inspires me, which is that you teach people to code, and particularly underrepresented people, women, non-binary, and such. And so tell us a little bit more about some of the things that you do there.
Yeah, it's one of my most favorite things. I feel like I fell into that probably, I don't know, I've been doing software development in some form or another for about 20 years. So it was about 10 years ago, I was at a point where I was kind of done, if I'm being honest. I
Yeah.
thought I've had a lot of struggles. I've had a lot of where I've had to feel like prove myself again and again. And I thought, this isn't the career for me. I'm not welcome here.
Yeah.
So I was on my way out, and I had a couple friends say to me, like, you're like, you love this. Why are you leaving? Like, stay. So I thought I need to find a way to make it work for me and where I could find my passions at. And I found that that was in volunteering.
Yeah.
So I thought I don't need to leave. I just need to get more people like me in here. Let's change the
Yeah.
ratio of things. So I started teaching women how to code. I got involved with schools and getting into like high schools and just different people who wanted to like career change.
Mhm.
And that's where I really found like I love this space because I feel like it's changing. Yeah, like I said, changing the ratio and the makeup of our industry and getting all these new perspectives in. And it's kept like the fire alive in me. And here I am today, still doing the volunteering and the coding and love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm so glad you stayed and that you overcame perhaps the adversity and the perception there and found an area where you can make a real difference, because we need more people to do that and to make a difference in that way and such. I haven't done a lot of teaching coding like at outside of professionally, but I have done a lot of STEM with the Girl Scouts. So for those of you that know me, I have a daughter. We're really big Girl Scouts family. For those of you internationally, Girl Scouts is a scouting organization that focuses on leadership, and there's a really large STEM focus in the last 15 years. And so I've gotten really involved in that and such. And so very, very exciting and very inspiring that you do that as a day-to-day volunteerism and such. So
I love that. Now, do they give badges, Justin? I remember I used to be a Girl Scout and I had a sash where I got badges. Is there a STEM badge?
oh yeah. No, there's multiple, and anywhere from computational literacy to many others. I forget what we specifically call them. So for those of you out on the stream there that are Girl Scouts experts, you'll probably put in the comment section which badges there are. But I know our troop has done at least 2 or 3 that are related to STEM as well. So very cool.
I love that because it exposes them early, right? And then they'll never know a world without these opportunities for them. That they're just part of it. I love it.
Yeah. And I love the element of blending science and technology with also the natural world. And some of the best scenarios in technology are using data and using observation in the natural world as well, which is historically one of the things that scouting is about as well. So I love that. I love that as well.
So
So
cool.
very cool. Well, so, how did it begin for you, technology wise as a web developer? How did you pick web development specifically as kind of your chosen discipline and such?
Yeah, I think a lot of this probably for all of us. I don't think any of us are very fortunate to know what we're going to do out of the gate. I think it's a series of sometimes, missteps or nudges along the way that get us here. And for me, I actually started programming in high school, like Oregon Trail. I remember like Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. I don't remember these games even exist
Yeah,
anymore, but
yeah,
it
I
was
played that
about
one.
like prompt based, I want to go travel on the Oregon Trail or I need to hunt for food or whatever that was, just scripts and prompts. And I never thought that was a career. I
Mhm.
guess I don't know why. I went to college and I never even imagined programming was a thing I could do. And then I found some friends. I was doing like a math class, like, those general education classes. And he's like, "You're really good at the math. Can you help me pass this computer programming class?" Which I needed as a general education. So I did it. And then I immediately switched. And that was C++ at the time.
Mhm.
Yeah, C++. Plus plus.
Yeah.
But I went all in. And I think for web development, I didn't really know I was going to be in web development. I started off doing databases and
Mhm.
database engineering and writing SQL scripts around databases. But there again, like these little things happen in life and they just nudged me to web development closer to closer. And I loved it. I love the design aspect of it. I love that it was something that I could immediately see what I was doing. There was a lot of creativity in it. And I just stayed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I actually started similarly in web development in my technology career, albeit indirectly. So I probably around the same time I experimented with coding in middle school and early high school, just kind of hobbyist. We really didn't have classes for coding yet. At that level, we had typing, so I learned how to
Yeah.
type and things like that. But started to like experiment with like C and Pascal. I don't know why I picked up Pascal first, but it was just like the book
Hmm.
that happened to be free that was laying around the library. And so I checked it out and things like that. But I actually was not going to go into a technology profession. I ended up like majoring in business and economics and was really focused more on like the theoretical side and the social sciences. But I got an internship at a small financial company and they had a problem. And the problem is that their website, their company's internet didn't work, or they wanted to modernize it a little bit or change it. And so in this like internship, I kind of indirectly discovered web development and kind of helped implement a very rudimentary CMS, a content management system, early on to like track different like financial reports and things like that. And it just became a bit of a hobby as followed up into kind of a profession. And the rest of my career is history, where I learned more and more about technology and kind of rediscovered it and things like that. And so web development is very near and dear to me. I've experimented and learned and grown skills over the years with Node.js and things like that. But it's truly an open and such a multifaceted platform. It feels like in the web, there's always a new library or framework or a new technology or a new way of thinking about the web, HTML5 and all of that stuff. And so it's always changing and such.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I love that I love your story too, that it feels like a little bit like mine, where we just kind of fell into things a little bit and we were exposed to more. And I know I always tell people like find something that you really enjoy and just go more in that direction and you'll
Yeah.
probably find more possibilities. And like you said, the web is always changing. So it's always about, like, for me, it's JavaScript. I love JavaScript.
Yeah.
So it was about finding that and going down that path and just learning more about it. And yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, speaking of going down paths, for this series, we do have a Cloud Skills Challenge where we invite you to explore all these different 24 job roles. And so on the Cloud Skills Challenge, we've selected a couple web development modules that you can check out and things like that. Challenge yourself to collect all 24, or just pick the ones that matter to you most as you're exploring new job roles. But definitely check that out, aka.ms/launch your career skills. And all free, of course, and some great learning resources there. I also wanted to talk a little bit more about, let's start to kind of profile web developer itself. And one of the things that we've been doing on these episodes is looking at LinkedIn and just kind of taking a glimpse at what the opportunity is for web developers, not only in the United States, as I have in this search query here, but around the world as well. It turns out there are about 53,000 open jobs in the past month in the United States for web developer. So it's a pretty big one. Certainly, there's always some demand there. And even then, that's only the term web developer. There are tons of variations. You might have heard of full stack or software engineer as a more generic title. There are specialties: front-end developer, back-end developer. Sarah, you mentioned about design earlier. We maybe touch on that a little bit later in the show and such. But there's just so much to explore in web development, and there's so many different kind of specialties and things like that. Which kind of leads me to a question, Sarah, from your perspective. Like, how would you describe like a full stack engineer? That term gets used a lot, or full stack web dev. So how would you distinguish that from maybe other elements of web dev and such?
Yeah, I think of a full stack engineer as someone who is responsible for working on the front end and back end. Mm-hmm. So what that means is the front end is the HTML, the visual pieces of it, and the back end is more of API, of where I'm getting my data from, connecting to the database. So a full stack engineer is someone who's responsible for knowing and working on both of those pieces and how they connect together. So the data comes from the database all the way to display through the website on the front end. Mm-hmm. A lot of pieces to know there. I feel like it's a lot of engineers get put in a full stack role to know all those of the beginning to end of an application, but there's a lot. I feel like engineers, mostly when you get into like web development, they have a thing they care for the most. So I think there's a lot of us. I identify as a full stack engineer, definitely, but I always prefer the front end. It's just my favorite. It's where I gravitate to. So when it comes to picking tasks on a team, I'll tend to be like, hey, like raise my hand for those front end ones because I think they're just a lot of fun.
Yeah. Where would you recommend that a person that is learning web dev start? I mean, is it on the front end or are there other options there?
I always start people on the front end. Mm-hmm. I like doing that because it's probably a personal preference, but I also like the fact that when I sit someone down and start teaching them HTML, CSS, you can immediately see that change, right? Mm-hmm. Real time. Where doing backend is more API, and there's a little more, you can get pretty quick with it, where you're developing an API that's just returning text, and you can see that pretty quickly. But I don't know, there's something about that quick win of front end that I really like, and it gets people hooked. And then it's easier to be like, oh, well, now you see this name here. What if we were to create a back end that can get you that data from something else and kind of go, into those pieces once you see the front work a little bit more?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think the magic moment for me back when I was in that internship was the front end. It was the idea that information could be published into a place that anybody in the world with a web browser could access. And so obviously we have so many more degrees of sophistication now. We've got React, we've got Express, we've got these front end frameworks that make it easier to build web pages. But like the primary thing that makes the front end so cool is that you get to see the tangible results of what you're creating. It's like software magic,
Yes. And I think once you see, right, you can hard code a site and see your data. And then once you see, okay, now I'll take the next step of, let's add the back end to get API to send me the data. And then you pick up from there. Then you're like, well, can I get this real time? Could I get a feed of like something that's continually happening? Like social media, right? That's like a continuous scroll, and a lot of those where there's always some continuous data loop that's coming in. So it just never ends. There's just so much you can do. But I think it does start with you can see your code come together and show you display right in the web page.
Yeah. I think what also is interesting for beginners and for those who are looking to take up web development is that the front end, at least initially, doesn't have a dependency on the cloud. And the cloud is obviously this amazing scale engine that allows us to think about our websites reaching millions of people, or security, or all of these features that make that make a backend development possible. But at least initially, you can localhost. You can focus just on the experience in your own. You can run it on your own machine, and then when you're ready and you start to progress degrees of sophistication, then you can deploy your website to the cloud. And I think that's such a magic moment, right? Like it's incredible that like now I'm the owner of this website and it's available for everyone and such.
Yes. Yes. All over the world, right? Immediately. As soon as it's published to the cloud, you can share it to anyone.
Yeah, love it. I love the ubiquity of it and the interoperability and all of that great thing that that the web brings. Speaking of web in general, like we talked earlier about, like the web has endured, in a time where technologies rise and fall, or different platforms come into more preference than others. The web has really endured for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, depending on how you define the web. Some people might say 50 or 60 web historians out there. And I'll also throw that together with one of my favorite data sources is the Stack Overflow Developer Survey. So Stack Overflow does a survey every year, and they ask developers out there, like, what are the top technologies that you use? And web dev still comes to the top. So if you're looking to enter the tech industry, there are a lot of jobs and a lot of demand out there still. Sarah, why do you think the web has endured so much? Why is it still at the top despite this world of mobility or proprietary platforms or things like that,
Yeah, I think a lot of it just has to do with it's accessible so many places. I can get to a website from my phone, from my iPad, from my computer, from I do Raspberry Pis where I'll work with kids to program Raspberry Pis, and I can get to a website from the Raspberry Pi, right? I think probably my refrigerator may have an interface to load a web page. I just feel like it's everywhere, and the places that you can view it just continue to grow. And anything, like beyond that, mobile devices, some of them, the apps on mobile devices are true apps that have been built for that mobile device, but others are websites that have just been, I forget, it's been a while since I've done it, but you can create a website that kind of looks like an app and it will load in the browser within the phone. So I feel like there's just so many uses, and you can view web pages everywhere. And I mean, there's probably, is there any companies anymore that don't have a web presence? I feel like if you're a company, or almost everybody's got a website, right?
Even the coffee shop down on the corner has their own website and such, so you can mobile order and such. Like, you're right, and you make a really good point around distinguishing like mobile development from web dev, because obviously mobile development is a huge platform, great opportunity as well. And like one of the things you pointed out is that you can be a web developer and use web code and website experience to basically create a mobile app, like a progressive web app or other technologies that basically source the website and such. How else would you distinguish mobile developments? Like if you're a dev out there and you're like, I want to design an app for an iPhone or an Android phone versus a website, like what would you start to think about those different design considerations and such?
Oh, I mean, I would probably start to think with what's the goals of each, right? If someone's thinking about that and their goal is maybe just to share information, I would probably think, well, then you could put that in a website, progressive web app, like you mentioned. But if you're getting into something, an app or an idea that you have, where you really want to get more into the connection into the phone, I think where is the phone located? Can, all those things you give permissions to for different apps, what they can access. Do I want to access the health features, or you can want to do more with that work? I think then you really need to get into mobile app development versus, for your coffee shop that just wants to show their menu in a mobile app, that might be a progressive web app or a website situation. I think it depends on the goals that you really want to do.
Yeah. And for those of you who might be more like newer to web dev in general, there was a time when the web, from a technology perspective, maybe didn't have as many of the features and functionality or opportunities that what we call a native app or a mobile app or desktop app had. But what really is kind of think played out over the last 20 years is the web has progressively had more of these features, more of these APIs, more of these what are called web standards, right? That developers can use and take advantage of, all the way down to simply even things like geolocation or even playing games in the browser was like a revolutionary thing maybe 15 years ago and things like that.
Yeah.
So the lines have blurred, and so if you're interested in being like a web dev or a mobile dev, you can practice both. I start with web dev, but perhaps you can then see what design considerations are specific to that mobile app and things like that as well.
Yes. I feel like engineers overall are a creative bunch. And
Yeah.
especially as web devs, when we find a spot where we can't get working, somebody out there is going to make it work. So you, like you said, Justin, I think all these, so many people over time have found all these little things, and whether it was a challenge or just because they needed it, they've developed all these cool ways to get so much done that wasn't possible, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years before. There's just a lot you can do today.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's take our first audience question. So Bree Joe C. Joy asks Sarah and Justin, will a website be replaced by a chat bot? And I'll paraphrase this, that like this kind of starts to get into that AI realm that I definitely want to talk about with you, Sarah. But what do you think? Will websites get replaced by chat bots?
Oh, this is an interesting question. I think there's a functionality that could be replaced with a chat bot for sure, right? If I want to know when the coffee shop on the corner is going to close or things like that, or their menu, that might be an easy chatbot thing. But I feel like there's always going to be the websites and those presence. I think what we might see, this is my prediction, I feel like those might get more artistic and more of like a showpiece where you want people to come and look at them, not necessarily as much for the information, but for the creativity that's there. I don't know, it's just my feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, yes. And I think different people have different preferences for how they want to consume information. And so like, I think a chatbot is kind of an additive or an assistive add-on thing. Maybe it's not a replacement to a website, or maybe it's a component of a website. At least at this time, like maybe generative AI or other technologies will make this so seamless that we no longer need like a graphic user interface. It's all voice, or it's expressed differently. But even then, like a chatbot can be on a website, right? The website is the shell for the chatbot interface as well, right?
Totally. And I think it's a super interesting time that we're in, because I feel like you kind of touched on it, Justin. I think we all have our preferences. And I think as chatbots and AI are more integrated, preferences for the generations coming will change. So for me, for the foreseeable future, I think websites are they're not going away at all. But, a couple generations from now, I'm not sure, right?
Yeah.
It could have technology that we can't even dream of today, and it could be a whole new thing that's in web development.
Yeah, totally. We'll come back to generative AI in a minute, but Meme Matrix asks, speaking of the long term, does web dev have a scope of high-paying jobs in the next 10 years? So I'll paraphrase perhaps a little bit, like, what do you think the landscape for web dev is over the next 10 plus years?
I mean, it's been growing at a fast clip for a long time. And I don't necessarily think, as far as web development, I see that slowing down.
Yeah.
I think it's going to continue at that same pace. It's interesting, Justin. I haven't looked at that LinkedIn stuff that you brought up. I wonder if you saw any information there, but I don't see it slowing down for the foreseeable future. 10 years for sure. I think we're going to be still growing at the same pace. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think to answer your question, on LinkedIn, it was still ranked on, like, they have like a popularity index, or like a score index. I'm paraphrasing here, that still ranks web dev as amongst the most popular job roles. Even when you think about some really recent tech job roles like data scientist or data analyst or cybersecurity engineer, those are really trendy right now. But somehow web dev still kind of stays near the top persistently. And maybe it kind of comes back to your earlier comments around, like, it's a foundation, and so Meme Matrix, if you want a high-paying job in the next 10 years, maybe start with web dev, but then decide where you want to branch out from there. Like it's a great entry point to exploring other technology jobs, just like the chatbot being put on top of the website, as well. So
yeah, that's a great point, Justin. Right? I mean, I always, like we talked earlier, it's where your passions and where you're kind of nudged to go. I think it's an absolutely great career, and it's growing. And I don't think there's any end to that. But if you were to get in it now, I think just follow what you're enjoying, right? You
Yeah.
may start in web dev as your launching point, but if you get into that chat bot and then you may go in a different direction, you still have this great foundation that, I mean, I know people that are in marketing and they still have to learn HTML so they can put emails and different things together.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a great foundational skill.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like one of the other popular ones right now that gets termed a lot out there in the wild is cloud native or a cloud native developer. We talked a little about deploying to the cloud earlier. Like web development is a really good pathway to more cloud native because you deploy a website sometimes to a container or you have cloud native architecture in websites and stuff. But Sarah, how do you think about like if I was a person who said like, I want to be a cloud native developer someday, what do you think the bridge or the stair steps are to that from web development and such?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us, if we're in web development, are probably cloud native already without even knowing it. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
think cloud native is essentially, right, we're developing and launching our site within the cloud. We're not it's not being developed in a different spot. Like I'm thinking of Azure, right? Like
Yeah.
we have sites that are completely launched on Azure, the database, the back end, the front end, they're all apps on Azure, right? So it's a cloud native app, and we're just in the cloud and we're letting the services kind of dictate the our needs there, as far as we don't have to set up a virtual machine. We don't have to set up any kind of on-premises machine.
Mm-hmm.
We are just using these containers that can kind of fluctuate with our need. So I think a lot of us, if we're using these cloud services for our sites, we're already there in a way. And if you're not, I feel like you're probably very close because these cloud services are so integrated into so many things.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's some inspiration in your words there. Like if you are aspiring to be a cloud native dev, if you're a web dev, like you are a cloud native dev,
Yeah.
like varying degrees of proficiency, of course, but you're already getting there because nowadays, like you can do a free trial with a cloud provider like Microsoft Azure or others, and you get free credit. You build your website and can be deploying to the cloud and experimenting with microservices or with
Yeah.
deploying your website to the cloud to a container that then has a runtime that's specific, and you can manipulate that environment and that and such. And so I think web dev is cloud native nowadays, and that's super cool in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And I feel like it's almost hard to avoid. I feel like that. I think a lot of the tutorials and things that I do when I'm thinking about teaching or working with students, it's and not only making that site, but it's that launching it into, like, I love that easy launch into an Azure static web app where you make a site and then it just is deployed and you're cloud native. Boom, cloud native.
Yeah, yeah, with GitHub and the whole stack on it too. It's a
Yeah.
pretty sweet product and such. Well, I wanted to come back to AI. Like talked a little bit about chatbots, but like generative AI, like ChatGPT 4 was launched last week publicly and such. There's a lot of buzz around, what generative AI can do. How do you think generative AI tech will change web dev over the next few years?
Oh, I am really excited about it. I think for a long time with web development and software engineering, there's always a running joke of you don't know how many times we internet search something to get a code written. And it's true, right? I feel like there's certain fundamental things in JavaScript I'll always have to look up. I don't know why. I don't do
Mhm.
them every day, maybe, but I'm always looking those things up. So when we look at things like Chat GTP and GitHub Copilot, I can ask those questions without having to do an internet search and start to get information, or it can start to fill in code based on a prompt from what I'm looking to do, and I can adjust it along the way. I am super excited about it because I feel like it's going to free up some of our mind space for web development that we have of trying to remember the exact syntax of things, that we can have these tools that help us along that journey, and we
Mhm.
can be more creative with what we're building and our total solution and how pieces come together. I think it will allow us more time and more kind of mental space to look at this other piece rather than worrying so much about the syntax of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Like we're we're pulling up more into the creativity realm of like what specific traits or features or experiences do you want your web application to have, where maybe some of the more like routine things or the templatized things of the web are just a little easier with the ability to generate it in real time and make it more, customize it or make it very more specific or that kind of thing. Like even if you're unfamiliar, like, Python Flask is a really popular, library right now for web dev, but who knows what it'll be 5 or 10 years from now. And maybe ChatGPT can help us get there quickly.
Yeah. I'm just excited about it. I feel like there's been key moments where web development has changed, right? So it's definitely like internet, like launch of the internet, mobile devices. And I feel like at those times, the industry as a whole has changed, but in particular, web development has totally shifted. And I think this is another one of those moments. I feel like what web development is now is going to be very different on the other side of this, all these AI tools. And I think it's going to be a lot more of just that, more creativity, more time that we can build cool things. Like, I don't know what we're going to dream up now that we're going to have this free time because we'll have these tools that write these loops for us, right? That's going to be so cool.
Yeah. And somehow I have a feeling we're not going to have as much free time as we think. It always seems to it always seems to be something that fills in, can you work on these extra features, or can you make it be a chatbot experience, or add more functionality more quickly, or allow more of our time to think about accessibility or inclusive design and working with our designers to create a more holistic experience. Like there's so many things that a web developer thinks about. And so if we can take away some of these things and allow the computer to help us get there, it sounds really powerful, and innovative and such.
Oh yeah. And just watching other tools that I'm about that can translate code or write tests for code or add some documentation to code. I mean, all of those things will just make it a fuller experience and a fuller app. So for someone that's going to be new joining a code base, like for anybody out there, right, when they start a new job, they have or they will get into this job and they get a brand new code base that they have to understand. So I think all of these tools, just even if it's writing a prompt and you leave your prompt as a comment, I think it gives a trail for someone else to understand what happened there. What was the train of thought that led to all these pieces coming together so that they can go in and learn it and support it. There's just, it's going to be so neat to see what we do.
Yeah. I mean, and indeed, like the web has been innovating like this for years. I see, Adish, I see your comment in the chat window about Three.js. Three.js is, a library that helps three-dimensional graphics and three-dimensional rendering in the browser. Like to some degree, that is an abstraction. That's templatized code or a function that allows a developer to do something more productive than creating all that math from scratch themselves. And so I think like generative AI is similar. It's like the next step on that because it can be, contextual. Like Fool Snable says, summarize this code base. Like you can type that in and get kind of a root cause, a root meaning. Maybe if you don't understand the code or you're trying to understand or understand specific parts of it as well. Pretty cool.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, Sarah, we're about at the, a few more minutes for our stream here. I want to make sure that we get time for your demo because one of the cool things I've had a chance to talk to you about and have seen lately is GitHub Copilot and really thinking about the idea of AI generated code and working along the side. So would you share with all our learners out there a little bit more about how this might look to actually use generative code in your development?
Yes. So I've been playing, like Justin teased, a little bit with GitHub Copilot. And in particular, I get to work with students a lot. So it's been a lot about how this can enable students to help learning. And so I've been working on a few projects on how that can kind of learn how to write prompts. And then the prompts then generate code. So GitHub Copilot is smart enough that it kind of learns kind of what you're working on. And they'll take a prompt and then give you a good suggestion about what code that might be. So I do have a sample here if we want to look at it.
Yeah, let's add your demo in there.
Awesome. Yeah, so this one in particular, this is a project that I worked on. It's in GitHub Education. This is surprise, I like I said, love JavaScript. This is a JavaScript node project. It's a template project. So if anybody wants to use it, you just say use this template, create new repository, and you get your copy of this template repo. But what it is a portfolio site. And I love this sample because I feel like it's open for anybody, regardless of your experience. If you're a beginner to advanced, it's just a fun project to learn the pieces of what web development is. It's GitHub, it's VS Code, really code editor, and then the cloud, like we talked about, and deploying to Azure. So this one in particular, this is a little preview of what the site looks like. It's filled in with some sample data. And the goal here is for you to make it your own. So it gives you a quick start, kind of like what we just talked about, to use this template, what all the different pieces are that you'll find in here, and then getting started. So what I've already done, and I guess I should back up for a minute, just so everybody knows watching this, I have a student GitHub account that I'm in, and I've already logged into my Azure student account. So these are both Azure for Students, and there's GitHub, you can get verified student. Those are the accounts that I'm in. They just give kind of no cost offerings, so students can come in and they can learn about web development. So, all right, in this one, I've already created my copy. So it says generated from the GitHub project template JS. This is my student account that I test with. And then I have my own version of this. So now I can make this site my own. So the first steps to do, it says to create a code space. So if anybody's not familiar with code spaces, it's basically a dev container that's offered up from GitHub. It gives you an immediate development environment with all the extensions and kind of your app running automatically for you. So you can just focus on development. So in this case, I've already done that too to save us a little bit of time. Oh, let's restart it. So what this code space is doing for this particular project is it's going to load up all the files and set the development containers all set up to run npm install and npm run start for you. So for anybody that's new and doesn't know Node and doesn't know those pieces, you could use this project and not even have to worry about that. It just takes care of all that for you so that you can start working on your site. So here we go. Here's all my files for this project. I can see here for all my Node people out there, Node modules is installed and filled in, and npm start is starting my my website. And if I go over here, I can launch this up, see if it'll, I have a couple up. There we go. So I'm in my code space in my project, and I've got my website started up. Already all this happened for me and didn't have to do anything. Then if we follow along, let's see here. I think it says like getting started. I'm just going through the README a little bit. You can customize your site in 3 steps. So like I said, I love this one because I feel like it gives you a base that everybody can be creative with and what they want. So I'll show you a little bit and then we'll get to some Copilot fun stuff too. So for this one, I'm just going to go in here. I followed the instructions. It said open up app JSX. And I'm going to update this one. There it goes. Oh, look, you could kind of see it filled. Did you see that? Look at Justin.
Yeah. Productivity already.
Right. Copilot's already like, I know you. And I can change this. Let's see if it will do it here. Software engineer. There we go. So I think these little things are just neat because let's see if it will do something else. Sarah at, oh, it's not going to guess my email. This is not my email. And I cannot spell, let's just, there we go. I thought maybe it would fill something in, but it's those little things too that you're like, oh, well, that was kind of convenient because it just gives you a suggestion or that ghosted text and you can tab to auto-complete it. So already in here, I can see that the site on the right-hand side is getting updated. Oh, look at, Love this. I just love it. It's getting updated with changes as I make them. So there again, if you're just starting off, this is a fun project that you don't have to be experienced web developer, and you can start to make your own site. So
And
sorry, Justin, go ahead.
no, and what I was just going to add to that too is like, and this is something that connects some of our earlier episodes, is that like we highly recommend like build your first website as a portfolio piece to demonstrate your skills, whether you have a portfolio on your GitHub repository or some web pages with your examples of work you've done. This is a great stair step as you're launching your career.
Yes, totally. That's what I love about this. I feel like it's kind of squished here right now, but if you were to look at this, it's very, I want to say bare bones in the sense of, I know students who have not necessarily, don't feel like they've accomplished a lot because they're like, oh, I don't have projects to show, or I don't know what I'm really passionate about yet, but they really do. They have a lot of projects they've done and they already know some of these items. So I tried to build this in a way to tease that out of them. So there's things like, what are some of your interests that you're in? What are you passionate about? And then down here, just give me 4 things that you built. And we've tried to make that so it looks like a complete site. So when they deploy it, it looks very full of all the things that they've done, just from us trying to like tease those good things out from them. And then, like you said, Justin, they can build on it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what's also important, I think for those of you who might be seeing this for the first time, and that is that a lot of what we're showing here is templatized, right? When you launch your container and code spaces, like you've got a fully capable web application going here. And if you're not familiar with some of these terms, or I don't know, the hexadecimal primary color, like where does that come from and things like that, just be curious, like mouse over that and kind of learn where that comes from, or look it up on the internet. There's a website for that. And so this is just a great place to explore with a prefabricated template like this, and the ability to real time change a website and then deploy it, as well. It's very cool.
Yes, and we can do that. I'll do that real quick too to show everyone. So this one, I'm just gonna, like I said, I've created my own copy for the template. So I'm going to, let's just commit this. I'm going to say change name and commit it. And this is going to my my student repo. And I'll say sync the changes. Just to say yes, I basically syncing is pushing them up to the origin main, which is the main branch of code. Sure, I'll let it do that. And then we can I've also got Azure logged into here. And I love this too, because I'm still only in a browser, right? I haven't installed anything locally. And now here I am, like I just made a website and I can connect to Azure and I can deploy to Azure. I didn't have to worry about installing or doing anything else. So in this case, we're going to say create resource. We're going to create a static web app, which is a cool thing in Azure. It's free. Everybody can launch static web apps. They have a free offering for, I can't remember the specifics, but it's on the site. But most everybody gets that. We'll allow this. We'll close this up. Yes, so here we go. So I'm going to say, yep, sure, it's my portfolio. I'll pick East. This is a React app. The location of your application code, perfect. This particular one builds in dist. So I'm going to update that. And so here we go. I haven't left my window that I'm in besides the authentication. And I can see that it's creating my Azure resources. So it tells me here that it's created my Azure Static Web App. That was successful. And it also tells me down here that it created GitHub Actions. So I can see over by my code. Now I've got these actions. And what these actions are doing, they're automatically created for me. And they're going to deploy my site every time I push new changes to it.
Yeah, you went from front-end developer to full stack cloud native pretty quickly.
Now we're all cloud native.
Yeah, we're all cloud native. I think that should be the meme of this episode, right? This is how easy you can become full stack. Obviously, learn all the ins and outs of this. Sometimes it looks like magic, but the ability to connect to Azure and deploy directly, to have some DevOps, right? You committed to main and some of that. So we talked about DevOps in our last, or 2 weeks ago, our episode of Launch Your Career. And so all of these things are interconnected. And as a web dev, you bring these together and orchestrate them. Very
Yeah,
cool.
definitely. And Justin, do I have a few minutes to show some Copilot?
Yes, please. Yeah, no, we've got about 10 minutes left. I'll try to answer some questions in the chat window, but the biggest one for follow-up is Meme Matrix is asking, where can I find this project? And so, Sarah, maybe I'll work with you to post it on our Tech Communities platform or something like that, or people can access it directly on the GitHub repo, as well.
Yes, we'll share it, and I know it might be hard to see here. github.com/education/codespaces project template JS. But yes, Justin, let's work together and make sure that everybody gets this link.
Okay, sounds good. But yeah, let's show them some Copilot. I've been looking forward to this all day.
Yes. So in the README, for anybody that picks up this project, there is some sample ways that you can kind of go about getting familiar with Copilot. Let me just scroll down there just to give everybody an idea. Here we go. Customize with Copilot. So these were just 4 sample ways that we can work with this. This is just a start of different ideas, but I'm going to show you a couple of my favorite. So I mentioned earlier about Copilot saves me from the things I don't have to look up, right? So in this case, if I go to my site and I'm going to click about, it just jumps you there. Sometimes the site will smooth scroll down, but I don't always necessarily remember what that is. So now that I have Copilot in this project, I'm just going to add a comment here, and I'm going to say add smooth scroll. Let's see if it will. There we go. So it's like it already gives me some of the CSS to give a smooth scroll. So I do a tab and I complete that. And let's see if it'll do it for me. I may have to refresh here. Just going to refresh the page. If I click about now, there we go. I got a little bit of a smoother scroll instead of just jumping right to the section. So I think that's like when I mentioned about things that when you start up a new site, you probably want to add like a smooth scroll, but you're not doing it every day. So just these little things, I think that just saves time and is fun. But we can also, another thing that I think is really cool. Let's say this is my portfolio site, and I want to talk about my education. So we don't have an education component in here. So I'm going to start and I'm going to create an education component here. And I'm just going to start with import. Let's see if it will React from React. So it starts to understand. Yep, that's what I want. I don't need make styles. I'm just going to hit enter. No, there we go. So then it's like, okay, gave me that option a couple times. Didn't want those, but this is what I do want. I wanted to start to define my React component. So I'm going to do a tab. And then I'm just going to, after that, I'm just going to see if I can hit enter a few times. Oh, look, it already did it.
Wow.
It's already, so just because I named it education, so look at it knows that look at University of Washington, full stack web development. It's already picked up the context of what we're doing, and that it's an education component, and it filled it in. So if I'm just going to go down a little bit more, and one thing we have to do with our React components is export them so we can use them, which it already knew. So it did that for me. So like if I didn't know how to write React, I could come in here with Copilot, and all I did was nudge it a little bit. I just imported React, and then I just started writing const education, and it filled all the rest in for me. Now, some of this might obviously be accurate. We always have to review Copilot code for accuracy, and just kind of, it's like your pair programmer, right? You're always working together on it. But this gives me like a really great start to what I actually want for this section. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have to code it all. So, and then if we want to pull that in, I'm just going to go back to my main app here. And then I'm going to go, all right, so now that I've created my component, I want to import, let's see if it's going to start education from my components. Yes. And it's just giving me an underline here. These are just like linting and formatting rules that's in this repo, right? It says it's declared but never read. That's fine. We're going to go down here. Now that I've imported it, I can use it. And I'm just going to look at, I didn't even type anything.
That's so cool.
So we'll do that. And I bet if I scroll down here below portfolio section, I think I'll see education. Let's see if we got it. There we go.
You added an entire section to a website in less than 2 minutes. That's cool. All you got to do is find and replace the string, and that's great, you know?
Yeah. And then there again, now that I've deployed this to Azure Static Web Apps, I can come in here. Let's see, I'll add these and I'll say add education. So once these, yep, let's go push those to origin main. So we're just getting them back to GitHub, to our main branch, which will pick up our GitHub actions and we'll deploy our site. Since we've already built that pipeline for deployment, it's already deploying for us. We didn't even have to do that again. So yeah, that's it. There's so many fun things, but those are my favorites.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. And I think one of the things that's great about it too is like, if you're a person who doesn't know React very well, like the fact that you imported React or then got templatized code, it can help you learn, a new library in this case. A lot of times there's similarities across different libraries, but if you don't know the syntax, you don't know how it's normally structured, this can help you get there pretty quickly just through experimentation, which is pretty awesome. Yeah.
Definitely. And just even writing with the prompts, even like this example, when I did education, I just started writing code. So that's one way that you can kind of signal the Copilot to help you. And then this one, I gave it a comment, which is another way that you can give Copilot some context. I like thinking about it as the pair programmer, because when you traditionally pair program, it's one person on the keyboard and one person kind of talking and like navigating. And I feel like that's what this is. It just gives us, who are all kind of solo devs, that extra head, that extra person with us to kind of think through some problems.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. That was a great demo. So we're probably at about towards the end of our stream here. I just wanted to kind of leave with maybe a couple questions and a quick reminder. If you want to try our Cloud Skills Challenge and try a little bit more of introduction to web development or JavaScript, we have Microsoft Learn, which is our platform of free tools and resources. Tons of stuff to check out there. There's certifications and all sorts of good stuff there. As well. But let's finish up, Sarah, with like, if you could recommend, where to get started for someone beginning their web development career, like what resources or what would you learn first and such?
Oh, I mean, I may be a little biased, but I do love that portfolio site a lot. Is a good kind of spot to learn. I also love it because I feel like it gives, you mentioned it too, Justin, it gives a valuable artifact. It's not just I'm writing a to-do list or something. It's hopefully something usable.
Yeah.
But that jumps you into React. I mean, I think if you just kind of want to ease into the pool of web development, I think getting started with HTML, which we have so much in Learn about building a simple website with HTML and deploying that to static web apps, or you just even learning that on your own. Those are really great resources to get started that will eventually take you into JavaScript. And there's a bunch in Learn on JavaScript as well. I think those would be great resources to start with. But I mostly think I just encourage people to play. I think it's great that, and like you alluded to it too, Justin, I think Copilot is great to help you learn. And if you want to, whether that's locally in VS Code or in a code space, and enable Copilot and just use that to kind of help you, nudge you on your way and your journey, and just follow what you're enjoying. And if you really find that you're enjoying CSS, then go dig into that more. And if you're really enjoying, automations with JavaScript or whatever that is, then definitely go explore that more. I think that's probably also a theme that I probably talked a lot about today was, follow your passions and you'll go to some place where you're successful.
Yeah. And most of what you showed today is either free or has a free trial. We have student tiers for this, we have tiers for professionals. And so get out there and try it out. Microsoft Learn is completely free, but there's also, free trials of Azure and Copilot and other things that you can check out as well to get yourself with a pair programmer like Sarah did in the demo here. So
yes,
good stuff. All right. Well, as just a quick reminder, for those of you who have even more questions, we have an episode where we're going to air this pre-recorded, and then Sarah and I will be available to answer even more detailed questions in the chat window as you need. But overall, Sarah, I'd just like to thank you for being our guest on this one. It was a lively and great conversation, certainly about a topic that I love and a great place to start when you're building your tech career. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Justin. It was a lot of fun. I know you pinged me a few weeks ago about doing this, and I was an immediate yes. So this has been a lot of fun, and thanks for reaching out.
Yep, you bet. All right. Well, thank you all out there that have joined us today. I hope this was valuable for you. Please take a moment to fill out the comments in our event code there for our survey. That does matter. It is something that we measure our success based on people's satisfaction and being able to connect you with resources and things that are helpful for your tech career. So have a great day, and thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you, everyone.